On the 18th of January 2026, 8 European NATO members deployed troops to Greenland. Small contingents, 13 personnel from Germany, similar numbers from France, Sweden, Norway. Officially characterized as a joint Arctic exercise coordinated with Denmark. The deployment occurred without U.S. consultation. 2 days later, President Donald Trump threatened those 8 nations with tariffs, 10% starting February 1st, escalating to 25% by June. The tariffs would remain, he said, until Greenland was sold to the United States. Complete and total purchase. Stock markets in New York dropped 2%. The Dow fell 1.8%, largest single-day decline since October. European leaders called emergency consultations in Davos. The Greenland push wasn't new. Trump first mentioned purchasing the island in 2019. Denmark's prime minister called the idea absurd. The conversation ended. In late 2024, as Trump prepared to return to office, he posted on Truth Social that U.S. ownership of Greenland was an absolute necessity. Greenland's premier responded, "We are not for sale and will never be for sale." Then, on the 3rd of January 2026, something shifted. U.S. Delta Force operators entered Venezuela. By nightfall, President Nicolás Maduro was in custody aboard a warship, bound, blindfolded, facing federal drug trafficking charges in New York. Over 150 aircraft involved, explosions across Caracas, at least 40 casualties at Maduro's compound. No congressional authorization, no warning to NATO allies. Trump called it Operation Absolute Resolve and said he would run Venezuela until a proper transition occurred. The next day, he gave an interview to The Atlantic. "We do need Greenland, absolutely." What followed wasn't diplomatic outreach. It was leverage construction. Trump appointed Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry as special envoy to Greenland. Landry announced he would attend a traditional dog sled race in Greenland uninvited, to make Greenland part of the U.S. On January 20, during a 2-hour White House briefing, Trump declined to specify how far he would go to acquire the island. "You'll find out," he said. Financial markets reacted immediately. European leaders began private messaging Trump. Screenshots of those messages appeared on Trump's social media, leaders attempting to placate, to dissuade, to negotiate. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney delivered a speech in Davos the following day. He didn't mention Trump by name. "Let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition." He warned allied nations to stop invoking the rules-based international order, as though it still functions as advertised. Call it what it is. A system of intensifying great power rivalry, where the most powerful pursue their interests, using economic integration as coercion. But what mattered wasn't the rhetoric. Greenland sits at 66.5 degrees north, 80% covered by the world's second-largest ice sheet. Population, approximately 56,000. Most living in coastal settlements dependent on fishing and Danish subsidies. Denmark transfers roughly $600 million annually to Greenland, nearly half of the island's GDP. The U.S. maintains Thule Air Base, operational since 1951. Early warning radar systems tracking ballistic missiles across the Arctic. Space Force personnel monitoring polar satellite activity. The base wasn't under discussion. Sovereignty was. Greenland holds rare earth mineral deposits, 8th largest reserves globally, neodymium, dysprosium, essential for military electronics, missile guidance systems, renewable energy technology. Most current global supply, China. Arctic shipping routes are expanding. Summer ice coverage in 2024 reached third lowest extent on record. The Northern Sea route remained navigable 4 months, longer than any previous season. Greenland controls access to the Northwest Passage along its western coast. The Denmark Strait between Greenland and Iceland is the primary naval choke point for submarines moving between Atlantic and Arctic waters. Russia operates 40 icebreakers. The U.S. operates 2, a third under construction. That distinction didn't stabilize tensions. On January 21, Trump arrived in Davos for the World Economic Forum. His speech focused on Greenland, not housing affordability, not economic policy, not trade frameworks, Arctic security. Every NATO ally has an obligation to be able to defend their own territory, Trump said. And the fact is, No nation or group of nations is in any position to be able to secure Greenland other than the United States. He called Greenland a giant piece of ice multiple times, cold and poorly located. Said the U.S. saved Europe during World War II and never asked for anything in return except this territory. So, we want a piece of ice for world protection, and they won't give it. We've never asked for anything else, and we could have kept that piece of land, and we didn't. Then he added a warning. You can say yes, and we will be very appreciative, or you can say no, and we will remember. During the speech, Trump ruled out military force. For the first time. We probably won't get anything unless I decide to use excessive strength and force where we would be, frankly, unstoppable. But I won't do that. I don't have to use force. I don't want to use force. I won't use force. The audience included over 1,000 business leaders, policymakers, heads of state. Some made obscene gestures outside the venue. Inside, the response was muted applause. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte sat in the front row. After the speech, they met privately. And that's where the framework emerged. Trump posted on Truth Social following the meeting. Based upon a very productive meeting that I have had with the Secretary General of NATO, Mark Rutte, we have formed the framework of a future deal with respect to Greenland, and, in fact, the entire Arctic region. He canceled the tariff scheduled for February 1st. Stock markets rebounded immediately. Details of the framework, unclear. Trump described it to CNBC as a concept of a deal. When asked how long it would last, he said, forever. He suggested the framework involves mineral rights for the U.S., access for European allies, collaboration on the Golden Dome, a proposed missile defense system. The New York Times reported that NATO members discussed giving the U.S. sovereignty over small pockets of Greenland's land. 3 senior officials confirmed the discussion, no formal agreement. Denmark's foreign minister called it positive that Trump ruled out force but noted the president's ambition is intact. Greenland's government told citizens to prepare. Residents in Nuuk bought camping stoves, candles, instant mashed potatoes. One resident said Trump talks about Greenlanders as just an ice cube. With this lunatic, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Polling shows 68% of Greenlanders oppose sovereignty transfer to the United States, but 72% support increased partnership with multiple nations. The distinction creates operational space. Because partnership allows infrastructure without constitutional revision, and infrastructure creates dependency that functions separately from political authority. The framework discussions continue. Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff assigned to lead negotiations. Reporting directly to Trump, NATO released a statement emphasizing ensuring Arctic security through the collective efforts of allies. Negotiations between Denmark, Greenland, and the United States will go forward aimed at ensuring that Russia and China never gain a foothold economically or militarily in Greenland. No timeline specified, no specific terms disclosed. Just framework, concept, understanding. European leaders emphasize sovereignty and territorial integrity in their responses, while acknowledging security discussions would proceed. The word sovereignty appeared in nearly every statement. But the framework operates in spaces sovereignty doesn't define, because control isn't always territorial. Mineral rights can transfer without borders changing. Defense arrangements can expand without flags shifting. Economic integration can deepen without constitutional amendment. The U.S. already maintains military presence, already provides security infrastructure, already operates radar systems essential to continental defense. What Trump demanded was formalization, recognition, ownership. What the framework offers is operational expansion without political resolution. Denmark retains sovereignty. Greenland maintains autonomy. The United States gains access. Everyone claims authority. No one surrenders position. And the system continues integrating. Former Danish Prime Minister Anders Fogh Rasmussen, also former NATO Secretary General, told CBS News that military action would be the only possibility for the U.S. to actually take control of Greenland. Greenlanders do not want to become Americans. Greenland is not for sale. But the framework doesn't require purchase. It requires partnership that operates like ownership, infrastructure agreements, resource extraction licenses, defense coordination protocols, mechanisms that function independently of sovereignty disputes. Arctic ice continues melting. Shipping routes continue opening. Strategic competition continues intensifying. And Greenland sits at the operational center of systems that no longer require political resolution to advance. The tariff threat created market panic, European unity, diplomatic crisis. The framework that followed operates in spaces those crises can't reach. Because power doesn't always arrive with territory. Sometimes it arrives with access. And once that mechanism exists, it rarely stays confined to one region.